IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to All Things Policy. I am Suyash Desai, and today I have with me my colleague Manoj Kemalramani. We have a special guest joining us, Mr. Jaydev Ranade, for discussing more on what's happening on the Sino-Indian border. Mr. Jaydev Ranade is the president of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy. He is a former additional secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat, Government of India, and also a member of National Security Advisory Board. He has been tracking China for over 3 decades and is also a member of various core China groups in various Indian think tanks. Thank you, Mr. Ranade, for being on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Mr. Ranade, could you please explain us what is happening on the Sino-Indian border? What is happening right now? Is it usual or is it very unusual from what has happened in the past?
Well, straight off, it's apparent that it's a very unusual development for the simple reason that it's not a question of an intrusion at one single point, as has normally been the case, but it's at multiple points, stretching all the way from Ladakh right down, in fact, to Nakula, which is in North Sikkim, not Natula, but Nakula, almost over 1100 kilometers. So it's a long stretch and multiple points, at least either intrusion or Chinese activity in Daulat Beg Oldi, in Gogra, in Galwan, in Spangur, in Pangong, Koyul, Demchok, Hot Springs. So it's a long link of points of Chinese activity or intrusion. And that itself makes it very different because it also involves 3 military sub-districts and 2 military regions.
What do you see for this? What are the leads for this? Is there a special timing for doing this? Is this due to domestic factors? Why is there a sudden aggression right now? And could you trace similar instances on China's other periphery as well?
I feel personally that it's a number of factors that have gone into it. And we could divide that into factors concerning India directly and other factors. So if we look at the other factors, I would say that there are a whole lot of things happening. There's a exponential rise globally in anti-China sentiment. There is high tension between the US and China, not only on trade, but a number of other areas, which makes China more sensitive to India going closer to the United States, or in their perception growing closer to the United States. There are also factors like the perception growing in China, among the Chinese populace, that the leadership is losing its grip on the so-called two centenary goals of the China dream and China rivaling or surpassing the US by 2049. And therefore, that impacts on Xi Jinping's position and that of the Chinese Communist Party, which is why we are seeing Xi Jinping taking a more tough line on Hong Kong, on Taiwan, etc., and here now. The second are the factors focused on India, and I think there are a series of them. There has been a steady decline or downslide in the relationship between India and China for some years now. And that has not got interrupted, despite all the high-level meetings, etc. Secondly, the operationalization of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, I think, was a major tangible move of not only expanding China's diplomatic, military and economic presence across the region and over its borders, but also it saw China acquiring tangibly huge stakes in this area, in the wider area, what I call of Ladakh, the larger area of Ladakh, and POK Gilgit, Baltistan, etc. So they have massive stakes there, and that is why things upset them. Things like strained Indo-Pak ties, and which they have been asking us to mend. Our revocation of Article 370 and 335A, though it was explained to them that primarily it is for domestic reasons. And third, because of the map that we have issued, again, they have felt that perhaps India is now, in a position where it could threaten the Chinese assets in these areas. And I think that would be one factor.
Yeah. So, Mr. Anande, so you spoke about the domestic sort of angle in terms of domestic politics in China, and how the leadership is sort of toughened up on many issues along its periphery. Xi Jinping has anyway got quite a few things on his hands right now. He's got a economy which is not in the best of shapes, to put it mildly. He's got Taiwan, which is increasingly leaning towards, if not necessarily towards independence, but leaning towards away from China or away from what was the 1992 consensus. He's got Hong Kong, which is right now there's serious turmoil, which can be expected despite whatever they do with the national security law. Amidst all of this, and he's obviously got the South China Sea, which is a perennial thing right now. How would opening another front sort of be helpful from them from a domestic point of view? Because in terms of driving nationalism, wouldn't you say that there's anyway enough that they have done with regard to, say, vilifying Pompeo and Trump every day on television or in the media?
Well, your question actually raises the issue of whether they are serious about what they're doing. How serious are they? Is it just posturing in a very ominous manner in order to get, some large concessions out of us? I'm purposely avoiding the word major, but large concessions out of us. Or is it something else? But whatever it is, I don't think it was either an action by a local commander for the reasons that I have mentioned earlier, or that it was some sudden provocation, because I'm not aware of any. So it was certainly a deliberate move. And a move like this could not have happened without clearance from the very top, which means Xi Jinping and the Central Military Commission. It could be to divert attention, or the Chinese may have thought this is the right time to demonstrate our strength and for Xi Jinping to shore up his position and credibility, which were damaged over the past year or plus. And the economy being in the shape that it is, the people are also getting more discontented. And this would be a good method of diverting attention and again showing that China is strong.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The other sort of thought that I had was that I wanted to get your sense on how do you think the Indian government has responded to this. So, there's been some discussion online in India about, things like the Chinese propaganda getting shriller. And sort of deploying the Doklam playbook. They're still far away from deploying what they did in Doklam. But there has been sort of disinformation efforts, there has been other things. At the same time, we've seen sort of officially both governments basically saying things of, yes, like Rajnath Singh, the Indian Defense Minister, spoke about perception differences. I want to first get your take on that. And then I want to get your take on how the Chinese propaganda has sort of operated and how official sort of ministries have basically said that things are stable and controllable. What does that tell us about how both sides are viewing this and how particularly India has responded to this?
Okay, so that's a whole lot of questions. You'll have to repeat.
Yes.
But let me just talk firstly about this perception. I think this phrase is an erroneous phrase, and we should not have formulated it when we did, which was some years ago, because it indicates that there is no line of actual control really, because it means the Chinese have their perception of where they are, we have our perception of where they are. The fact is, on the ground, patrols have been going to certain places, drills have been evolved by which the patrols either avoid each other or stop and tell each other that this is our territory and go back. But in the case of an intrusion, it is actually a willful penetration of a certain territory to show that it belongs to the other country. Now, either they occupy it or they just make that indication and go back. So I think this question of difference in perception should not be there, because we certainly know where our line is and we are going up to that line. And they're going up to what they see as their line. So there's no difference there. To my mind, I think that's a term that we need to think about replacing that term with something else. The other point of yours about propaganda. The Chinese media, as we all know, is controlled. The Central Propaganda Department of the Chinese Communist Party exercises very tight control on the media. There are 3 to 4 advisories that are issued to every media head every day, telling them what to print, what not to print, what prominence to give it, etc. So they're a controlled media, unlike ours. And I'm talking about the entire media, print, audio, etc. And they're able to control it, and which is why you see that while the government is keeping either quiet or giving very sober and limited comment on the situation on the LAC, the media is issuing threats. And here all I will say is that whatever threats the media has issued or whatever publicity the media gives, the timing and the extent of shrillness are certainly predetermined, and predetermined by the authorities in Beijing. In India, that's not the case. You have differing voices, widely differing accounts, because they're a free press, it's a free media. And this can open up another subject, of course, altogether, which is about how the government should really come out and what its strategic communication should be like. But that's a totally different subject as to how the government should manage the media in the free world.
Along with all the factors that you have highlighted, how much would you say that increase in India's border capabilities have led to insecurities in China, which is leading to this dispute? This is the first question. Second question, this time, unlike Doklam, Chinese have been quiet on the issue. They were more vociferous during Doklam. Why do you see, first of all, do you see such difference? And if yes, then why there is such difference?
But your first question was about us building up our border infrastructure.
Yes.
I think upgrading our defense logistics certainly is a matter of concern to the Chinese, because they are watching our border. They were very safe and secure till now. They had, very developed border infrastructure. Now they're seeing us catching up. So that's certainly a concern, but I don't think it is the solitary concern, because they are still way ahead of us in terms of infrastructure development. So while that they would highlight it as a factor to impede us, I don't think that would be the trigger for this. Your second question, well, on Doklam, as we know, it was 73 days, and every day there was vitriol being poured by the Chinese. They also identified various threats for us, etc. That was one style of confrontation. One doesn't know how serious they were, but certainly the troop movements that we saw, the activities that we saw, did indicate that they were building up for a possible conflict. And I think then better sense prevailed, A, because of our preparedness, and B, I think because of the ground situation where we were dominant. So they probably had to take that into consideration. This time, they have been quiet, and I think the quiet posture of the Chinese, or their quietness, if I may call it, has two implications. One, they were indicating that there is a line open for diplomatic negotiations or for negotiations to try and sort the matters out. Had they been very shrill, they would have narrowed the space for these diplomatic negotiations, diplomatic and military negotiations. The second is a bit more pessimistic, which is that they are not saying anything because their plans are something else, and they are wanting to keep those plans hidden from us. So even if the talks continue, I don't think, and certainly it will not happen, that our side will drop its guard. So I think that is how I read it. I'm sorry I can't be more specific, but it's difficult to fathom what the Chinese are up to right now.
Yeah, that is true. It is extremely difficult to fathom what they're up to right now, because there's been so much strange stuff. But let's just, so you've sort of answered the question that I had in mind, but let's just go a little bit deeper into that. How do you see this playing out? So we've had now talks with, at the Lieutenant General level. So although theirs was a Major General, we're now potentially looking at a long standoff, although both sides say that things will be managed. How do you see this sort of playing out? I mean, it's from our vantage point, it seems like the Chinese have nibbled some territory away, and they're sitting on that. What's the sort of playbook that India should be looking at, apart from, yes, of course, keeping our forces on guard and being prepared for any eventuality? What would be a climb down that could be can you sort of think of a climb down that could take place from both sides?
Well, a lot depends on how we assess this whole thing happened. From the beginning, I had said, in fact, that I don't see this matter being settled after just one or two meetings. It's going to be protracted discussion. But if you accept my assessment that the action has been predetermined and it was cleared from the top, then you would also be accepting my argument that they have some plan in mind, they have some objectives in mind. So, which would imply that during these discussions, the Chinese would put forward some fairly large demands on us. We, of course, have already made clear that we want status quo ante to be restored. That raises two questions. The first, will the Chinese withdraw after having put in all this investment and effort in creating the present situation? Will they just back off? A repeat of Doklam, where Xi Jinping came under some fire for that? Or will they insist on their demands being met, which could be pretty major? I mean, they could include anything from, I would say, stopping construction of the Shiok-Dorbuk DBO road is one, but my suspicion is that they might ask for much more, because my hunch is that they want to safeguard their strategic and financial investments in the Aksai-Chin, POK, Gilgit-Baltistan area, and they will make their demands keeping that in mind. It will be protracted, I think.
Okay. One last question, Mr. Ranade. So this year, I think there is 23rd talks between the special representative on the boundary disputes scheduled later this year. So with this background, where do you see these talks heading?
Well, the talks will continue. We will see the 24th round also next year. I think, they serve a purpose in the sense that you have a high point of contact on both sides. You hopefully are able to prevent the situation from boiling over. But those are limited objectives. I've seen very little progress towards settling the border. The Chinese have shown no inclination, and they're, I think, strong enough to just sort of keep the talks going without showing any movement on the ground. Their aim, I think, is if we take their 2 centenaries goals seriously, once they achieve what they want by 2049, that is the time they may look to us to try and settle it on, of course, their terms, because by then they would be either they would have displaced the United States as the number one power, or they would be partnering the United States. This is their perception. I'm not saying it will happen. There's much that can go wrong, but I think it is only then that we can expect to see some forward movement. Right now, I just feel that the special representative talks are a good point of contact. It's a good sign, but that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ranade. Thank you, Manoj. It was a fascinating and insightful conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope it was worth it, and thank you very much for having this interview.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
I hope you enjoyed that show. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. It really has been a great week this week. We've had two of our first international cricketers show up, people who have played for their respective sides. We had W.V. Raman come on Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast. If you haven't heard that, you should be listening to that if you enjoy cricket. It's really one of the best out there. And you should also definitely check out Monty Panesar, who showed up on Cyrus Says. That was another really interesting conversation that occurred. If you haven't been listening to a few of our shorter shows, please do that as well. Ashish Vidyarthi has been doing a great job for us. We got 30 episodes now on Begin the Journey. I think you really enjoyed that show. If you haven't listened to it, it helps you with understanding what's going on in this tough time and how to deal with it from a mental health perspective. We've also had some really fun stuff come up on the Smile India show. Shifa's been doing a lot of really good stories over there, things that just make you happy, so definitely do check that out. And on the more serious side, make sure that you're checking out our regular shows like the Pragati podcast, All Things Policy. They're definitely going to keep you up to date on what's going on in this COVID world. And thanks for listening, and we hope to catch you again next week.
Namaskar, this is Ashish Vidyarthi. Yes, my friend, these are challenging times, but in these challenging times, we can create something extraordinary. Do take time to listen to my podcast, Begin the Journey, available on the IVM Podcast, website, app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, we have a great opportunity called life. Cheers.